Okay. Behemish nechtechu ragla min akuva ulamata. That's going to have multiple meanings. So let's just get to the picture of an animal. So there's a couple of things that we need to understand about the structure of an animal's foot. So I'm going to point at first to this picture over here. So this picture over here, this hoof area is like the toe, and this area is considered the ankle. Let me see if we have a breakdown of the animal's leg. Okay, let's look at this one over here. Yeah, ArtScroll has a little bit better pictures here. So this would be the ankle. This little bone sticking out of here would be the ankle. So that's this here would be the bottom of the bottom of our foot is what would be the bottom of our foot by them is in the air and they're standing on tippy toes. Then this is the shin bone, which would be our shin bone. And the thigh bone, interesting enough, in a cow you don't even see because it's in its torso. And then this is the hip bone. The only mammal that walks on four legs that you do see the thigh bone is a human and a camel. The camel is a very interesting construction, which the Gemara points out, is you could see the thigh bone because it's separated all the way up here. But in the cow, it's all inside. So that's the basic structure of the thigh bone. Now, if anybody ever looked at a bulldozer or an excavator, how does it work? There's the big arms, and then there's the hydraulic pistons. As they push and pull, they bend the joint. That's exactly how our bodies work. But the bones we see, the bones are like the metal shovels. The hydraulic system are our tendons and our muscles. So we actually work exactly like a bulldozer, except tendons and muscles are able to move in many different directions. It's not just open, close. They flex in different ways. And we have many more joints. Can you imagine if this was a bulldozer, there'd have to be either a little electric motor in either place, or there'd have to be a hydraulic piston for every single joint. And we can move our fingers back and forth too. Like we move in so many different directions. And so there's a whole bunch of different tendons that are connected to muscles that pull and push on things, and that's literally how our bodies work. So the way the cow works is the tendons, there's a whole bunch of tendons that run down from the muscles down into the leg. Now, if you look here, you'll notice that the foot itself has no meat in it. It's just a bunch of tendons that are connected to muscles that are higher up in the leg of the cow. The place where things start to transition is on the foot, it's all pure tendon. Around the ankle area,
there's gullet in there.
Around the ankle area, that's where the tendons start moving towards meat. Now, this picture is a skin picture of that area. So you'll notice. You ever notice how on a bulldozer, the main shovel, the joint is not like this. It's actually like this, the joint, and then this part that sticks up is connected to a piston, and as it pushes, it moves it this way and that way. That's exactly what this joint is. So this is a tendon that's connected to the bone that sticks out, so that it could operate the bone up and down. It's almost like a bulldozer. So this is actually a tendon, it's not a bone. The bone, you could see, is almost uncovered over here. You can see it's a slightly different color. This is the actual bone. If you actually feel your shin, your bone is right up against the skin. The meat is towards the back. So that, similarly, here's a bone, but these are all tendons that are connecting. Now, this area here, and the Gemara, today's discussion will be what is the exact area, but this area here, which is like this subject area here, is somewhere where a whole bunch of these tendons come together, and it's called Tzoymas Hagidin. And that is a very critical area, and if it's damaged, it makes the animal a treifa. I'm sorry? No, but the Gid Nasha does connect to one of them. The Gid Nasha is connected. We don't need any tendons because because of some of them are connected to areas that might be impacted by the Gidon. Now, what this Tumas Gidon is, Rashi learns it's the 3 Gidon that are on the back of the leg. So this is one of them, and there's 2 more, and they come together over here. The Ravid learns. So this here is this joint here, it's the ankle joint. It's the ankle joint. The Ravid learns that there's 3 Gidon that are on the front of the joint, which are these Gidon. And the controversy comes from the fact that the Gemara seems to say that there's 3 Gidon together, that run together. You could see on the front of the leg, there are 3 Gidon that run together. But on the back of the leg, this is 1 Gid, and then there's 2 inside here. They're not 3 bundled together. And that's what the controversy between the Ravid and Rashi is, and it gets a little testy. It gets a little testy, because what happened is Rashi said over Pshat. But the Gemara says somewhere that the 3 Gidon are bound together. So the Ravid says, I checked, and there's no 3 Gidon bound together on the back. So they have to be in the front. So the Rosh says, for the Ravid, Bishlam if the Ravid said, I have a Kabbalah from Friedrich Adoris. Okay, no. So then you could claim to argue Rashi because you checked. You're gonna argue on Rashi who's coming with a Kabbalah of Doris because according to your Ashar Sadas doesn't fit in the Gemara's Lashon. Like, who do you think you are? This is the Rosh talking to the Ravid or about the Ravid. So as in all Hilchas, Kashrus and Treifus, it always gets a little bit testy. So there are those who learn in Rashi that it's not this and then these 2 that are the Tumas Gidon. Rather, this here itself, when you open it up, you'll see is comprised of 3 Gidon themselves. You can see this is that big one cut off, so you can see there's smaller tendons bundled together with this large tendon to look like one tendon. So there are those who want to say that's Pshat and Rashi, and it's not the other 2. Here you have sort of a cross section. So here's the bone in front. Here are some tendons, and here's a tendon there in the back. Okay. See, this is what it looks like, but it's hard to see. But you can see here's the tendons. These are the 3 tendons I think of the Ravid. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now based on this, we can move on. Behema shenechtechu ragla min harkuva ulamata. What is the arkuva? For now, we'll say, although that in and of itself will be very much in dispute, normally we call the knee the connection between the thigh bone and the shin bone, right? But that's not necessarily what the Gemara is going to say in all opinions. So, sorry? Right, the knee's a joint, that's right. But it might be referring to the ankle joint. Ksheira, it will be kosher. So if it's below the ankle, for sure it's kosher. Below the knee, if you say below the knee it's kosher, you're going to have to say below the knee, but not in the Tumas Gidon, which is going to lead to a little bit of a problem. Because the Tumas Gidon is at the bottom of the thigh bone, right before it connects to the ankle bone. Sorry, the shin bone. The Tumas Gidon is at the bottom of the shin bone, right before it connects to the ankle bone. If the Tumas Gidon is cut, that's going to be a treifa. So when we learn the Mishnah, if you learn it's below the shin bone in the foot bone, that's very, very easy. But if you learn Minar Kiva means the joint between the thigh bone and the shin bone, that's above the Tumas Gidon. So we're saying there it's kosher, but if you cut the Tumas Gidon, it'll be possible. How is it logical that if you cut higher up, it's going to be kosher, and when you cut lower down, it will be possible? And the Gemara is going to say, when it comes to treifus, you can't ask such questions. So based on that, we're even going to see there's a shita who holds that if the Tumas Gidon of the animal is cut, a solution is to cut it further up afterwards and make it ois treifa, because had it been cut further up, it wouldn't have been a treifa. So there's a discussion as well if that would be a treifa.
But we're not talking about Uber
No,
now.
we're talking about a regular animal. So behema shenechtechu ragla min arkuva l'mata kshera min arkuva l'mayla psula v'chein shenitel Tumas Gidon, or if the Tumas Gidon is taken out, nishbar ha'etzem. What if it's not cut off? It's just a fracture. The bone is broken. So im roiva basar kain, if the meat around bone is in good shape. It's just that the bone is fractured inside. Then shchitasai mitaharasai, the shchita will be mitaharid. Rashi is umuter bachila v'mlav ein shchita mitaharasai. I'm sorry.
Why does it use lotion kosher?
Why mitaharasai? I'm not sure, but let's see Rashi weiter. V'afilu b'mokim shabehema muteres have ever aser b'shivul basar b'sod treifa. If the bone is cut, that's called meduldal. So the aver is going to be the aver might be tahar, but it's not going to be able to be edible, and that could be why it's used. Rashi says it's only going on the animal, but if it's going on the aver, it means it makes it tahar, but it wouldn't make it edible. The imlav ain't shchitas v'tarasei. If there's not enough meat on it, ain't shchitas v'tarasei. Zok the Gemara. Amar Rav Yudah Marav. Amar B'chia. What does lamata mean? Nechtachu regla lamata min ha'arkuva lamata. It means lamata min ha'arkuva. Lamaila is lamaila min ha'arkuva. Frank the Gemara be'ez ha'arkuva armu. Which joint? As Shlomi pointed out, arkuva is not a knee; it's a joint. At which joint are we talking about? So Gemara ba'arkuva hanim keres im harosh. Whenever they would sell a head, they would actually sell it with the feet. It was a package deal. Why it was done that way? Maybe Duvi can share some insight. Why the feet and the head are both packaged together? It probably was the guy. If someone said, "I'm going to give you such a nice cedar, you had to from the cup, from the behind bis the fees."
Nothing in the middle.
So normally that was sold together. So therefore, the arkuva hanim keres im harosh means the ankle. So if it's cut below the ankle, it's going to be kosher. That we know, because it's below the tzumas agin. Amar Rabbi Oshia, kenegdoi begamol nicker. On the camel, it will be nicker. Now right away, that's going to be a little bit difficult, because never mind is the foot nicker by the gamol. By the gamol, even the thigh is nicker, right? So that in and of itself is a little bit of a problem. So let's have a look. So obviously, Rabbi Oshia is going to be arguing on the pshat we just said, because the pshat that we said that we're referring to the ankle and down, that's nicker even in a cow. So Rabbi Oshia now argues on what we just said from Rabbi Yudah Marav, and he obviously holds that the arkuva is much higher up, because he's saying that we're talking about a joint that is not nicker in a cow. So let's see what Rashi says. Kinegdoi. Shall I say Malkim the Masnisin, the Gamal would be nicker. Why? Because of Rabbi Ishia, Arkuva the Masnisin is not the ankle. He Arkuva Ha'elyoina, which is where the thigh bone connects to the hip bone. And the thigh bone is not, not where the thigh bone connects to the shin bone. The thigh bone connects to the shin bone, which is the equivalent of our knee. Hiyakuv el yoina, which is our knee, v'sham boiled etzem b'yerach hagama. That's visible in the thigh of a camel, but not visible in the thigh. The thigh of a cow is not visible, and the joint that we're talking about, the midarkuva lumata, is below the knee, which is above the tumas hagidin. V'hakitanya b'chayis the oisar kuva nikeres b'gama. It's visible in the Gomel. Okay, so Zog to Gemara weiter. So Rabbi Oshia is a very big kula, because he's saying even if the shin bone gets damaged, it's going to be still kosher, right? Amar ula Rav Yehuda bishlam didi. I'm sorry. Ula Amar Rabbi Oshia is connected to Gomel. So Amar ula Rav Yehuda bishlam. According to me, the amina connected to Gomel nicker. That means, I'm saying if the bone was cut at the top of the shin bone, but below the knee, it would be kosher. Hainu de katani, that would make sense. Why the Mishnah later states, v'chein shenit al tzumas hagidin. Why is that? Because if it's cut above the tzumas hagidin and it's cut below the knee, that will be mutter. So it's a mashma and then v'chein she'nitla tumas agidin means it, and even if the tumas agidin is cut, it's going to be osir, right? So nachamo min akuva ulamata is kshera, meaning below the knee bone, at the top of the shin bone, will be kosher, and the tumas agidin is below that. So you would think that if the tumas agidin were cut, there wouldn't be a problem, because that's below the area, below the top of the shin bone. So there's a chiddush that below the shin bone is not a problem, provided that it's not the tumas agidin that was cut. So that makes sense, because based on where I said it's kosher if the bone gets cut, you would think anything below that wouldn't be a problem. So I need a mishnah to say there's an exception. Below that top of the shin bone, there's no problem, provided that it wasn't the tumas agidin that got cut. So that makes sense. El lidach. But according to you, where the only time it's kosher is if you cut it below the ankle, so my v'chein shenitl tumas agidin, the force, that's above the ankle. So that is the problem. According to you, who learns that the only time a behemoth is kosher if the bone is cut is if it's below the ankle, why would the Mishnah have to then say it's also going to be a treifa if you cut above it? We already know that. Omar lei. So therefore, in Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, we want to try to massage it a little bit. Amar lei rekuva beloy tumas hagidin, v'tumas hagidin beloy rekuva. What it means by tumas hagidin means if the tumas hagidin were cut, even if the bone wasn't cut, even if the bone is completely intact, that's the chiddush of the Mishnah when it says v'chein shenitl tumas hagidin. Yes, even if the bone is not cut. Frankly, more by the time what the Mishnah says. V'nechtechu katani. It says nechtechu, right? Look what it says. Nechtechu regla. So we're talking about it being cut. You can't say it's not severed. Nechtechu means the leg is severed. So if the leg is severed, you can't say it's the bone and not the tumas hagidin, or the tumas hagidin not the bone. It's everything.
Yeah, but it says v'chein shenitl tumas agidin.
But the word nechtach means severed. So it's a question of where the leg was severed. But where it was severed, everything was severed. The meat, the bone, everything. Ishtik. So Rabbi Yehuda was silent. He acknowledged that Ula's kasha was a good kasha. It says Nechtechu. Labasa the Nafak, after Ula left, or is it after Rabbi Yehuda left? Let's see what Rashi says. Who left? Labasa the Nafak, after Ula left, so Rabbi Yehuda, Rashi says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda l'nafshei, Rabbi Yehuda said, you know what, I could have answered him better. So Levasa Novak Amar my time he asked himself, Rashi says, why didn't I answer to Ula a simple question? That Lamata means Lamata min ha'arkuva, and Lamaila means Lamaila mitzumas hagidin. What would that have helped? So Rashi says, I could have said, my time army, the Lamata de Amar, when it says in the Mishnah that if the bone was cut, Lamata min ha'arkuva, it means Lamata min ha'arkuva, Umitzumas hagidin. It means below all that. Ulamayla de katani, lav lamayla miyad mashma. It doesn't mean right above the tzumas hagidin. Ela begoyva shel etzem lamayla min atzoymis. It means all further up. So again, lamata min ha'arkuva means at the bottom of the shin bone, or at the bottom of the shin bone. Well, doesn't mean right above the shin bone, it means way up. So we're talking about lamata means underneath the knee, meaning in the foot bone below the ankle, and lamaila means way up above the tzoymes hagidin. V'hadar tana v'chein shenitla tzoymes dem nechtech v'tzoymes nami treifa. So that will fit already, because lamata min arkuva means if it was cut in the foot, that will be kosher. That's below all the critical areas. Lamaila min arkuva will be way up at the top of the shin bone. So there's still a chiddush that if it's cut a little lower, if it's just a bone that was cut a little lower, it wouldn't be a problem. But if you cut the tzoymes, then it is a problem. So once again, this is a shtickle agreeing to what Rabbi Yosy said, because now he's saying that if you cut the shin bone above the tzoymes, it would still be kosher, right? So this is a little bit of a concession to what Rabbi Yosy said what Ula said in the name of Rabbi Shia. Zog to Gemara, so that's what I could have said, but then he said, no, I wouldn't have been able to say that. Hadar Amar, V'loy Amr Lei. Didn't I try saying something similar? V'amar li nechtechu katani. It means cut off. So in the same way, he wanted a shtelzich that nechtechu means literally nechtechu, and the bone was completely severed. Then I wouldn't have been able to say this other pshat that I just said. Hachanami minar kuva u'lamayla katani. It says minar kuva u'lamayla, and he would not have said v'loy amr lei. You see, he was very much being medactic in the lashon Mishnah. V'chiloi amarti loi tam hogun. When I didn't tell him something that was perfectly accurate, like rechuva v'loy toimas v'toimas v'loy rechuva, and what did he say? He said, no, that's not the lashon Mishnah. Uparchim elishon b'snisin v'amli nechtechu katani. So you can't say one was cut without the other. So by the same token, I can't offer the second alternative pshat. V'achanami iav amr lei. If I would have tried this pshat on him, meaning what's possible is if the bone was cut in the shin bone, then he would have jumped on me. Kavadayik nami lishna v'omerli minar kuva u'lamayla katoni. The mashma besamoch behind the b'tzay misagidin. So again, what was the second b'shat that Rabbi Yehuda wanted to offer? If you cut it, l'mayta minar kuva is underneath the ankle in the foot bone. L'mayla minar kuva doesn't mean right above that. It means way above that, all the way right below the knee. That way it will be kosher. And then the Mishnah says tzay misagidin further down is also going to be a problem. But he would have told me l'mayla min akuva. It doesn't mean when you're comparing from l'mata min akuva to l'mayla min akuva, you're talking about right below the ankle to right above the ankle, not really right below the ankle to right below the knee. L'mayla l'mata means if we're talking about the same joint, the ankle. So l'mata would be below the ankle, l'mayla would be right above the ankle, which is the bottom of the shin bone. In his second pshat, he wanted to say that l'mayla min akuva means at the top, right below the knee. That's not Pasha Pshat. Pasha Pshat is l'mata l'mayla. We're talking about one demarcation point. Below it is going to be kosher. Above it will be pasul. You're talking about two different places. When you're saying l'mata, you mean below the ankle. When you're saying l'mayla, you mean up on the shin bone, not right above it. That wouldn't make sense. And therefore, without saying l'mata l'mayla, then the tzay misagidin wouldn't make sense. Because once we're saying that if you cut right above the ankle, it's going to be pasul. So that's what a tzay misagidin is. I don't need the Mishnah then to repeat tzay misagidin. So therefore, it seems right now that Rabbi Yehuda Amarav's pshat is not so geshmak. It doesn't fit in so good with the Mishnah. Zok to Gemara, Rav Papa Masna Hachi. This is how Rav Papa learns. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amarav Amar Chia. Lamata means lamata min harkuva umi tzay misagidin. It means right below the tzay misagidin is where the Mishnah is kosher. Lamayla means lamayla min arkuva umitay misagidin. It means above the arkuva and above the tzay misagidin. V'chein shenito tzay misagidin, as well as if the tzay misagidin was taken away. V'arkuva gufa, and the joint itself would be kedu'ula amar aboishia. So Rashi again explains the details of this pshat. Zok to Gemara, Rav Papa. Rav Papa quoted Rabbi Yehuda slightly differently, and he dashes it as follows: Lamata the Masnisen, when it says Lamata min Arkuva, Lav Lamata miyad ka'amar. It doesn't mean right below the knee, rather it means much below the knee, and we're talking about the real knee joint, not the ankle joint. So Lamata min Arkuva means below the knee joint, but towards the bottom of the shin bone, not right below the knee, which would be the top of the shin bone. So lamati the masnisin lav lamata miyad ka'amar, the rekuva the masnisin berekuva el yoinamayri. So now we're saying even Rabbi Yehuda Amarav agrees with the interpretation of arkuva, and it doesn't mean the ankle, which is how we learned until now. Now we're going to say that even Rabbi Yehuda Amarav holds arkuva means the actual knee bone. Hilchach lamati didei, below that knee bone is what we would call our shin bone. Dahainu etzem amtsoi. Zimnin de trefa, depending on where the break in the shin bone is, not the break, where the sever, depending on where the shin bone is severed, will determine whether or not it's trefa. So zimnin de trefa, if the shin bone is cut right where the tzumas hagidin is, that would be a treifa. Elahachi ka'amar, and this is what he means. Lamata my oiser rakuva, u'me'etem emtsoi kula. When he says lamata my rakuva is kosher, it doesn't mean right below the knee. It means at the bottom of the bone that's connected to the knee, meaning way, way, way at the bottom of the shin bone, which is right before the ankle. It doesn't mean right below the knee. It means at the bottom of the shin bone, which is way below the knee. The hainu be'etzem atachtoin v'adai kshera.
That passes through the Sagid.
Way past, that's right. And Lamaila means Lamaila in Arkuva, meaning way above the knee. That's in the thigh bone. Dainu bekulis v'adai treifa kol macham sheyach. Now in the middle, so in the thigh bone, for sure it's going to be a treifa. At the bottom of the shin bone is for sure going to be a kshera. And then the chenchenit al tumas agidin ube'etzim emtzoi in the shin bone itself. If the sever was there, when will that make it a treifa? Only if the cut is in a specific place. Mokom shi treifa kagoyim b'tumas agidin v'yesh mokom shi ksher kain l'maylam etzoymis. So here in the thigh bone, for sure it's going to be a treifa. In the foot bone, for sure it's going to be a kshera. And in the shin bone, it depends. Anywhere on the shin bone, if it's cut, it will be a kshera, unless it's cut where the tumas agidin is. So that pshat will be very similar to how Ula learned in Rabbi. So zok to Gemara weiter. So that is our papa antulun. Hachim Rabbi Marav, Amar Pchia lamata in Akuva, which means way down. Umi tumas agidin, so it's well below at the bottom of the shin bone, or even in the foot bone. Lamaylam means lamaylam in Akuva, meaning in the thigh bone. Umi tumas agidin, it's way above there, right? And then the chenchenit tumas agidin means if it was cut in the shin bone itself, only if the tumas agidin was severed. V'akuva gufa kedula. So therefore, he'll learn akuva like ula, that it literally means the knee, our knee, meaning what connects the thigh bone to the shin bone. Amar Ba'ishya, how could it be? So based on what we're saying now, if the shin bone is cut above the tumas agidin, it will be kosher. If the shin bone is cut at the tumas agidin, it'll be treif. Does it make sense that if you cut it higher, it should be kosher, and if you cut it lower, it should be treif? If you go higher up and cut the bone, the animal will live. Mamti pasukla. But if you cut it lower down in the tumas agidin umesa, Amar Rashi, we've heard this many times. Treifos kamadamas ladodi. You're asking me a kasha treifos? Ein ayim b'treifos zu doimelazu. You can never compare treifos. Sherechaytcha mikan umesa. If you puncture the b'nei ma'ayin, or if you puncture the veshet, it will be treifa. Chaytcha mikan, but you cut the kana, it won't be a problem. So therefore, when it comes to treifus, we can't make up rules. It is quite possible that you cut lower down the tumas agidin, it'll be treifus. You cut above, it won't be. And this is where there's a challenge to Rishonim. What if it happened that the tumas agidin was cut? Can you fix the animal by amputating higher above? So now that we've been talking about the tumas agidin above, below, in the middle, what is the tumas agidin? Rabba Omer Abashi, it's the agrima ulabar. It's from the bone and outside. Rabbi Barafuna Amar Rabashi, the agrima ulagav, is from the bone and inside. So we need pictures for this, because how am I going to describe it otherwise? So in the Art Scroll, it does show it, but here it actually shows the exact place where it is. The Art Scroll also does. There's a picture in the Art Scroll where there's 3 dotted lines running horizontally through the leg of the animal. And those are the 3 areas. So so this is the area that's going to be blown up, which is right around the ankle bone, which is where everything starts. So there's a little bone that's part of the ankle. There's, I think, like 6 bones as part of the ankle assembly. That's called the arcum, the talus bone, and I believe that bone is visible at the front of the animal. Now, the arkamot lagav is the lower area, so right at the ankle bone going up a couple of finger breadths, or maybe totfachem breadths, we'll see in the Gemara. Then there's the arkamot levar, is the tumas agidin starts a little bit further up over here. And then there's a shita that it's the whole thing. So just how far above the ankle bone is the area of the tumas agidin, because they run right through here. Question is which zone it is. The Art Scroll that has a much smaller picture with horizontal dotted lines running through the leg. You have that over there? So Zog to Gemara. So Amar Vashi the Arkamo the
Not
bar.
really front or back. It's really just how high up.
Yeah. I'm just saying, but that bone happens to be in the front of the knee, and that's where you start from. So Dago bar Rabba Bahuna Amar Rabashi the Agmul Gav. Rabba Bar the Rabba Bar Huna Amar Ravasi the Eloi Arkuma. Anything that's above that bone, meaning it actually includes both of the areas above and even a little more, because it starts right above that Arkuma bone. Yosef Ahumar Rabbanon Kamei Rababa. There was someone sitting in front of Rababa, but Yosef Amar Darkuma Gufa. It even includes to the tendon that actually goes lower, which is parallel to where that bone is. So not just right above that bone and up, but even including the area that's right in that ankle bone. Don't listen to him. That's not the Tumas Hagidin anymore. That's already called below the Tumas Hagidin. When they would skin an animal, they would cut the skin right around that area, which is right above the Arkuma, meaning right where the Tumas Hagidin is, right below that. That's where they would slice the skin to start skinning the animal. That's Wamshan Rashi. Or when they were pulling the meat off the bone, that's where they would cut the veins out. But either way, that would be a good reference point, which is right above their Akuma bone, meaning anything below that would not be a problem of Tumas Hagidin, so that's why he's contradicting what the Himar Rabbanan said. V'hainu Rava Barei the Rabba Bar Rafuna. And that would stem with the pshat of Rava Barei the Rabba Bar Rafuna, as we just said a moment ago, that is the Eloi Arkuma. It's the area right above that bone. Amar Basi. Now, Vibat, we have a Machlokes Rishonim as to what it is. And we also have a Machlokes in the Gemara where it is, we are Machmer. Rashi says, Rashi is not referring to the Machlokes Rishonim, but Rashi, since there's a discrepancy where all these things are, we are Machmer by everything because it's Safek Deraisa, and we also are Machmer Sai the Ravid, Sai Rashi. So depending on which tendons are cut, we will be Machmer no matter what. Amar Abud Amar Shmuel. Tzayim Hagidin Shamru, it's Mokoim Shagidin Tzayimsin. It's where the Gidin come together. So that's why the Ravid didn't like Rashi's Pshat, because as we saw in Rashi's Pshat, one of the three tendons actually separates from the other two. And it's for this reason why the Ravid wanted to learn that we're referring to the three tendons that runs across the front of the shin bone, because they are all together. V'yat Kama, up until what point above is it still called Tzaimis? Omelei Humer Rabbanon. Rabbi Yaakov Shemei, Ki Avinu ve'Rav Yehuda Amar Lon, Shimu Mani Milza. Listen to what I have to say. The Megaver Rabbo Shemili, because I heard it from a very chosh of a person, Umanu Shmuel. And you know what he told me? Tumas Hagidin Shamru is Mokoim Shagidin Tzaim Simboy. It starts where the Gidin come together. Umimokim Shetzaim Sim Ad Mokim Shemishpashtin. And it continues up on the animal's leg until where the tendons blend into the muscle and start spreading out, and they're not a thin tendon anymore. How long is it? How long is that area? Can you tell me in inches how many inches above that bone? V'chama Amar Abaye Arba Batati Bitura, 4 finger breadths by an ox. Now those who learn Batati is tfachim, so it could be anywhere from 4 inches to like 16 inches, right? So we're machbid on anything. And bedakamai, on the smaller animal, how long is that tendon? That up until what point in that tendon would it be called Tumas Hagidin? Amar Abaye beliti, if they're still sticking out, meaning they're not wrapped in meat yet, because as it goes lower down, the meat stops, the muscle stops, and it's all just plain tendons. So beliti have it Tumas Hagidin. Beli, if it's already absorbed in the meat, then lo have a Tumas Hagidin, it's no longer called Tumas Hagidin. So if you cut up there, it wouldn't be a treifa. Ashuni have a Tumas Hagidin. If they're tough, then they're called tumas agidin. Rikichi, once they're soft, because once they're blended into the muscle, they're softer. Lo have a tumas agidin. Alimi, if they're hard, have a tumas agidin. Ketini, if they're small, lo have a tumas agidin. So these are all different symptoms that you could check it with. Okay, weiter. Chavur, if they're white, have a tumas agidin. Lo chavur, if they start to get red and they blend into the color of the meat, lo have a tumas agidin. Mar bar Rashi Omar, Kivon the zigi, once they become sort of clear, avagav de lachivim, if they're not white, that's also a sign that it's tumas agidin. So when you can't measure exactly, you have to use those simonim to tell where the tumas agidin end, and that's a critical area, because if it's severed over there, the animal is going to be a treifa. Amar Meimar Mishmei Rav Zvid, Talasa Chu Tehava, there's three tendons together. Again, this is another place where the Ravid said, according to Rashi, it's 2 in 1, right? Talasa Chu Tehava, Chad Alima, one's a thicker one, Utrei Katini, and then there are 2 smaller ones. Now, these are the 3 tendons that are part of the tumas agidin. What happens if ifsik alima, if you cut the thicker one, as the roiv binyan? That means most of the mass of the tumas agidin has been severed. Ifsik katini, if only the smaller ones were severed, then asli roiv binyan. Then most of the most of the tendons were cut, but not most of the actual tendon material. So he was machmer.
He means both?
Yeah, both of them. Yeah. Mar bar Rav Ashi masni lekula, he says punkvakert. Ifzik alima, if only the thicker one was severed, ha'ikar raiv binyan, and therefore it won't be a treifa. If sekatini ha'ikar raiv binyan, so it won't be a treifa. So there's a machlokes if you go l'chomer or l'kula, and we're soon going to see there's going to be a shita that holds even if there's like one thread remaining from each of the tendons, that will be good enough. But oifos, what about birds? By birds, there's like 16 tendons that go from the pulka bone, which we eat, down to the leg bone, which we don't even eat anymore. We used to get it, we don't get it anymore. But there's 16 tendons there. Shitzter chutiava, if even one of them gets damaged, treifa. I was listening to a shear, and normally they don't get severed, but there are certain sicknesses that chickens have that cause their tendons to get weak. And one of the issues they have is chickens are fed because they want to be fattened up. And sometimes they're fattened up so much, the enzymes that they give him and the DNA or the breeding that they do creates very fat meat. The problem is it doesn't strengthen the legs, nor does it strengthen the tendons. And sometimes the legs of these chickens aren't enough to carry their weight. And because of that, their tendons fail. So therefore, they actually have issues in the U.S., a serious issue. Sometimes full batches of chickens are al treif. Because of that, a lot of schlachthäuses, before they buy the chickens, they go to the farms and examine the legs, because they don't want to buy 10,000 chickens and they turn out all being treif. And even if one of them is severed, it's going to be treif. So this is actually a real contemporary issue. Amar Mar bar Ravashi, Havakim the Kamei da Abba, I was standing in front of my father, Va'aisha the Kamei Oifa, they brought a bird for him, Ubabak, he was biting it, Va'ashich ba Chameisar. There was 15, Havachad, Davashanim Echavi. But out of the 15, one of the tendons looked a little different. Nafse, when he squished it a little bit, Va'ashich Shrei, it turned out it was 2, but it looked like it was 1. Amar Bidu Amar Rav, Thomas Akin Shamar Berubai. When we say that it has to be severed, roiv has to be severed. My rubai, beroiv echad mehen. Even if one of them is severed beroiv, it will be a treifa. That's not like what we learned a minute ago. Ki amrisa kabei de Shmuel, Amarli, he said, michti, telosahava, there's 3. Ki mifsik chadmi nayu, legamri, even if one is completely severed, you're saying roiv echad would make it a treifa, even if a complete one was severed, ha'ikatre, you have 2 others. Taima the ikatre, but that at least you need 2. Halekatre, loy, it would be possible. Upliga Rav Noi, he's arguing Rav Noi. Rav Noi is the most cool Dikashita. The Amar Rav Noi, Amar Shmuel, Taimas Agidin, Afil Loy Nishtayr Bo Elikachut Asarbal Kshera. Even if on each of the 3 there's only like a little fiber holding it together, that would still be kosher. The Ikadami my rubai, what does it mean roiv? It means roiv kol echad vechad. If roiv of each one are cut, it will be puzzle. Again, that wouldn't stand with Rav Noi, because Rav Noi said even the hair on each one would keep it going. Let's think about this. Talasa hafa. There's 3 tendons. Ha'ika tilsa. So you have a third. The kol chad v'chad misayele. Even if you cut roiv of kol echad v'echad, zok Shmuel, it shouldn't be possible, because there's still a little bit left from each one. So Gemara, obviously, he holds like Rav Noi, Messiah the Rav Noi, Amar Rav Noi, Amar Shmuel, Tzemes Agidin Shamru, Afilu lo nishtayir ba lekachot asarbol ksheira. So Shmuel clearly holds, as long as there's a little bit left in each one of the 3 tendons, it's going to be kosher. Okay, I guess we'll stop here, and we'll pick up tomorrow by Nishbar Etzem, because it's already getting into a whole new sugya. Okay, so we'll stop here. We're up to Nishbar Etzem. We'll continue tomorrow. There was a lot of technical information. Shkoyach.